Hello and welcome back to the channel. My name is Krashy, and today we are going to dive into a updated tier list. Now, I'm a little bit behind on this one, and I think I'm not going to lie, I think these videos are getting way too long because we're just getting more and more and more characters, that I'm going to go back to doing a single tier list, and I'm just going to explain. So if you want full context, watch the whole video, like, subscribe to the channel. Again, 45% of y'all are not subscribed, so definitely drop a subscription on the channel for future Pokemon Unite content. Let's go ahead and dive into this. Yeah, so I don't think I'm going to split the lane and jungle tier list anymore. It's just becoming a little bit tedious and making these videos long, and I'd have to make 2 videos, and I don't want to do all that, but we are definitely going to talk about this tier list. So first and foremost, Sableye is S tier. I think this Pokemon is incredibly strong. Yeah, it's busted, man. This thing is a speedster masquerading as a support. It is the most ridiculous jungle invader. It has crazy get out of jail free card with its ability to just go invis, and this Pokemon is silly. Does crazy damage, has crazy burst damage. Actually, this thing is literally a speedster. It's absolutely busted in my opinion. I think it is really crazy. But outside of the S tier, I'm not actually sure that I feel like, or outside of Sableye, I'm not actually sure that I think anything else is like dominating an S tier position. I think that some of the former S tier picks are still incredibly strong, so we'll definitely have to talk about some of those. But since I'm kind of clumping everything back into one tier list, a lot of the things that I would usually put S tier, especially even like on the jungle side, I've kind of pulled down a little bit in my mind. So yeah, let's go ahead and dive into a specific class outside of the S tier pick, because I'm not really sure if I'm going to put anything there, and I haven't pre-planned this tier list yet, and I'm going back to clumping it all together, so we got to try that again. So let's go ahead and look at supporters. I think Mr. Mime still feels like A+ tier to me. Mr. Mime is incredibly strong, very tanky. Confusion Barrier is solid. I think Power Swap and Psychic is actually good as like a really supporty kind of like stunning and peeling and kind of like perma healing your own teammate with Psychic to stun and peel. And the Unite move is just amazing. So Mr. Mime to me still feels really solid. I don't think you're gonna have any problem playing Mr. Mime in solo queue, and you can do a tanky focus build. You can still run your SP attack specs. Mr. Mime feels amazing, really solid in lane, and I definitely would recommend you play it. Now, additional to that is Eldegoss. I think Eldegoss is incredible. Very incredible. Does damage, brings good healing, good CC, good like peel. It's very strong. Very strong support. Laner. Blissey. It's the same thing. All of these supporters, especially like Mime and Blissey, who kind of almost even double as like a little bit of bulk, they bring so much to the table. Blissey is crazy. A pocket Blissey on a Venusaur, a pocket Blissey on pretty much anything is incredibly strong. For solo queue, if you're playing it truly solo, you're still going to provide a lot to the team. And yeah, man, it's very strong. Now, I think Clefable, I don't quite like it as much, but I do think that Clefable is still really strong. It has a pretty low win rate right now, but I have a hard time imagining that it's a much lower than like A tier. And the thing is that you're really only going to play like a pocket healer like Clefable or Blissey if you're playing like with someone else. So solo queue, I really don't think that Clefable is just like great. You're probably not going to want to dive into Clefable just full on solo queue, but I still think it's really strong. I don't know. There's something about it. Maybe this is a little like evaluating this Pokemon a little too high here, but dude, I don't know. You can still do 100k healing games with Clefable and just run around and be annoying, but I don't think it's nearly as good as like say Eldegoss in terms of the healing role, since some of the LD buffs. So I don't know, maybe it is like a B+. You know what, I am gonna go ahead and pull it down because it just feels like it's just okay. And Wigglytuff, I don't know, I think that Wigglytuff is like a really good like support defender, right? Like this Pokemon is a tank. There's no way of looking at this thing outside of it just being a tank. I don't think it's amazingly impactful in the meta, but it's not bad. So I'd probably put it B+ tier. It feels like it's just a really solid option. Feels pretty good. And Hoopa, I honestly don't know what to do with this Pokemon. Again, since I'm, you know, S, A+, A, B+, B, and then C, I think that I'm going to have to stack some of these lower tiers a little bit harshly. Hoopa feels like it just doesn't really, the macro that Hoopa brings to the table doesn't feel super impactful or strong. Like being able to jump around the map, and even the Unite move Unbound with its stuns and stuff, it doesn't feel super strong. I don't think it's that low though. So I guess I'm just going to put it at B tier. Just doesn't really feel like you need it these days. And yeah, so there's that. All right, what class do we want to go to next? Let's go ahead and dive into defenders, I suppose. Defenders, there are honestly some really good defenders. I still think that Greedent is at least A plus tier in solo queue. This thing's a menace. It brings great damage. It's really, really annoying. It can invade very well. It can steal. It can dive backline. It's tanky, but it's also just plays like an all-rounder. I think this character for solo queue, it's not something that stands out as a super, super strong pick, but it is incredibly solid. So I think A plus is honestly where I still want to put it. I think it's very, very strong. For that. Some of the other defenders that I think are really strong, or actually I think it might be the only other defender that I think is absolutely this strong, is Mamoswine. This thing is a menace. It's not a menace in the same way that Greedent is, but this thing brings so much CC to the table, does really, really solid damage, feels really, really impactful. And yeah, Mamoswine can definitely do a lot in the form of tanking. Now, I do think that Trevenant is really solid. I think that Snorlax are really solid. They're very good tank picks. They're not quite as impactful in my opinion, although Trevenant can bring a lot of damage to the table. It's just not something that I see get picked a lot. It's not something that I think is doing as well in the current meta as Mamoswine, so I'm going to pull it down a little bit, but even Snorlax, just very, very strong. Yeah, really, really strong. I might even put Slowbro in this same tier because Slowbro's really good. You can do like Mage Bro. You can put damage on it. You can just be really, really tanky. I think Slowbro got a pretty decent buff recently, so it feels pretty solid. And it's a really good counter pick to certain mons as well. So I definitely think that Slowbro, Surf Plus is great. Scald is great. Telekinesis got a buff. It just feels pretty damn solid to me. Blastoise, here's the thing. I view Blastoise as way more of a jungler than a tank, and it can do some really good damage, but on that front, it's not super impactful. Like, you don't need to jungle this character, but it is a pretty decent jungler, but I think it's like pretty B tier. It just doesn't feel like it can get much more done than that. And Crustle, honestly, pretty B tier too. It's like a decent tank, but it's not super, super strong. I might even pull, well, I say B tier, B plus tier. I might even pull Crustle down as the tier list develops a little bit more, but for now, this is kind of what I'm thinking for the defenders. I think Blastoise is actually pretty strong. Like, it's actually pretty strong, but I don't know that you play it over some of the other defenders if you're looking at lane, and you definitely don't play it over a lot of the other attackers or like speedsters or all-rounders if you're looking at jungle. Now, what I can say about solo queue, and I was going to make a video about this, but I never got around to it. If you have a game, like let's say just random solo queue game where your whole team is like picking attackers, if you have jungle already called, like say you were sitting on like Scizor jungle or Zoroark jungle, you could literally swap to Blastoise jungle. It actually does good jungle, brings good damage, and rounds out the team comp. So I don't know, Blastoise jungle as like a pocket pick to kind of like round out a crappy solo queue team is actually not bad. All right, let's dive into the attackers, I suppose. I think solo queue, Delphox, Greninja, insane attackers. Venusaur, insane attackers. These attackers are really, really nuts. Like, they are... Venusaur can lane. Delphox is kind of like okay in lane, but I don't really like laning it. Greninja's terrible in lane. Do not, just because you see it on the tier list, do not lane this Pokemon. This is strictly a jungle pick here. But yeah, these are phenomenal junglers. Venusaur, like I said, a really, really solid laner as well. A pretty solid laner. They're just so good. They scale well. They perform well throughout the entirety of the game, and they're really, really solid. Yeah, I think that's what I'm thinking. Let's think. What other attacker? I'm sorry, A9's terrible. I think Decidueye is terrible. Maybe I could push one of these up. It doesn't really matter to me. Cram just doesn't feel very impactful. The problem with A9 is it can't move. The problem with Decidueye is it's too squishy. You can snipe and be annoying, but it's too squishy. It gets dove very easily. Cram just feels like it's really struggling. It's okay. Air slash dive's still decent, but it's just not the strongest thing in the world. And honestly, maybe I should put it a little bit higher. I may move this one up a little bit. Gardevoir feels really solid. It might even be A plus tier. I haven't played it quite enough this patch, but it feels like it can actually kind of lane okay, and it can jungle, but I think there are better options, so it's going to at least take a solid A tier in my opinion, but it feels pretty damn solid. It really does. I think that Cinder is just kind of middle of the pack in it right now. It's okay. I think Espeon is pretty meh, but it has like some potential, but not really a huge reason to pick it. And kind of, I think that Pikachu is actually starting to grow on me. Volt Tackle is really, really annoying. Keep in mind, I say Cinder's kind of okay out of the jungle. Sorry, do not lane that Pokemon. Pikachu is actually kind of growing on me just because the Volt Tackle build is just, it's oppressive. It's annoying as hell. So definitely can bring some good counter CC to the table. Sylveon, with its most recent buffs, in my opinion, is an insane Pokemon right now. I think it's very, very good for solo queue. I got to give it A plus tier. I'm actually surprised to see I have this many attackers this high up, but very, very strong feeling. And Glaceon, I actually think that Sylveon jungle is better than Glaceon jungle right now, but Glaceon jungle is still incredibly annoying, so I'm gonna at least give it a tier. Mew is incredibly annoying, really, really strong still. Doesn't feel as oppressive and annoying, and then Duraludon jungle is very, very solid as well. Has a really, really high win rate. Duraludon jungle is pretty crazy. I don't know if I should put that A+ tier. Maybe I should, but for me right now, just in my own personal perspective and with what I've played, I think that some of these other attackers just feel better in jungle to me right now. Honestly, Duraludon lane is not that terrible, so maybe even a pretty solid laner, but I don't know if I think this is much higher tier than some of these other attackers that we have on the list. But this is kind of what I'm feeling for the attackers for now. All right, speedsters. Dodrio is still crazy strong in my opinion. Yeah, you can lane this, you can jungle it, it can invade very well. And actually, I may need to pull Dodrio down just because Sableye is so annoying. And like, I know they don't fit the same role, but honestly, I don't know if they maybe do fit the same role just as a laner, because Sableye is like, it's a support, but it's not like you pick it as a support, you just pick it because it's strong. But Dodrio feels really, really strong. Absol feels like solid. It's not bad, it's not overwhelmingly good. It feels really, really solid. Zoroark, I think it definitely got cut down a little bit, but still really, really oppressive in the early game. But still, it never scaled super, super well. It's very strong and it can have a good end game, but it feels like it got knocked down a little bit, which is pretty solid. And yeah, that's pretty good. That's pretty good positioning. I think Gengar in solo queue still insanely strong. I gotta give it A+ tier. I think it's really, really good jungler. There's so many really solid jungle options for solo queue specifically. Gengar is crazy. And Zeraora, in my opinion, always gonna have, I'm gonna have probably put it higher than I think most people probably will. I think Zeraora is incredibly strong. The one-shot combo that this Pokemon has can absolutely win team fights almost on its own. Very, very, very strong. And Talonflame, I think it's somewhere around the B+ tier as well, because it has so much score tempo potential. You can really kind of control the game, and then it's got a pretty decent fight. It's got a pretty decent presence, solid ultimate, fast charging ultimate, but lots of score potential and lots of map mobility potential. So kind of what I'm thinking about it for now. I don't really see any of the speedsters as like bad right now. I think they're all pretty solid actually. So yeah, good for speedsters now that I'm thinking about it. I mean, there's not that many of them, so. All right, let's take a look at the all-rounders. Man, all the all-rounders are so good. It's such a weird thing to do. Let's go ahead and talk about jungle all-rounder Charizard. This Pokemon, very, very strong, incredibly strong. Again, I don't think I'm putting anything else in S tier outside of Sableye right now. Just nothing really stands out to me. But Jungle Charizard is crazy. Really controls the game very well. Not super great in the laning. So definitely don't really recommend laning Charizard, but you can do it, honestly. But super, super strong jungler, in my opinion. Serena, super, super strong in lane. Azumarill, super strong in lane. Man, Scizor is really, really strong in lane. And for what it's worth, I actually think that this is where it's weird because I don't have Scyther on here, because I'm using like a different... I like the colored backgrounds. That's why I'm using this tier list maker. Scizor jungle is actually... and Scyther jungle are both really, really good, but I think that this Pokemon, like, dude, these all-rounders in the game right now are really, really strong. A lot of them are very, very strong, and I think I want to give them all A+ tier because they're very, very, very strong. But I'm not sure. There's so many all-rounders, I really need to think about it. Tyranitar is very, very strong, but it just requires jungle. You have to have jungle and you have to hit level 9. So there's like a risk related to it. But if you can scale this Pokemon, if you do have a good early game, it's really, really strong. But I think because there's risk in picking it, I'm going to put it at A tier. Buzzwole is really solid, but it doesn't really scale the best. Like, it can get a lot done, but it just doesn't have the best team fight in the world. Like, sometimes you can just go in and you don't really get a lot done, and other times you can go in and you dominate. It just kind of depends on your early game, I feel like, but it's not the most consistent thing in the world. Lucario still really, really solid. Just really, really solid. Best way I can put it. I think D-Knight is not... It's weird. D-Knight's not terrible, but just like ripping objectives is not like the most impactful thing in the world. And so it doesn't feel bad. It just feels like okay, like middle of the pack, and it feels okay. Garchomp, in my opinion, is in the same position. I don't think Garchomp's nearly as bad as it's probably been perceived as for a long time. I think Garchomp jungle, specifically, not in lane, is pretty damn solid. Like, no worse than some of these other junglers here in the B tier when it comes to the speedsters and like even Cinderace. I think it's pretty solid. Machamp I think Machamp is solid laner, but it doesn't really get played as much these days. It really just feels like an alternative to like Lucario, kind of the same thing as like Buzzwole. Like all of these, like Buzzwole, Lucario, and Machamp are just really solid laners, but they're definitely not the best. I think you're going to get a lot more value and mileage out of some of these all-rounders that I have up here in the A+ tier. Outside of Charizard, because Charizard's the jungler, and then Aegislash. I think I don't know where I want to put Aegislash. I think Aegislash is still incredibly strong, so I'll probably give it the A+ tier. You can jungle it, you can jungle invade it, you can lane it just very well. And this is kind of what I'm thinking. I could, again, give or take a bump up or down here or there. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below for sure. But again, try to look at each individual pick, and like I said, some of these things cannot lane. I'm just going to go back to doing a full tier list and give my thoughts one at a time, because I think it makes it a little bit simpler. But dude, a lot of the Pokemon in the meta are like really strong, like pretty damn good. Like I said, if you're looking at this tier list and you look A+, and S tier, these Pokemon will guarantee get you wins pretty much. And even then, like some of these A tier picks are just like, they're just okay. Like they're pretty solid. They're okay. B+ tier is like, yeah, that's really where B+ tier is. Like they're just solid. You can get some wins on them. A+, and S are like where you really want to be. A+ and S is like, do you pick these? You're picking out of these two categories right here, A+ and S, you're going to be winning game. They just have so much potential, so much strength. So friends, let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. I'm sure there's always, every time I do a tier list, I always look back at it and think like, oh, I really should have moved this here. But just what I'm thinking for now. But as always, be sure to be kind to one another. Tell someone you love them, and I'll see you on the next video.